The Texas heat was a physical weight, a hammer striking an anvil that was the endless shimmering horizon. The morning mist had long since burned off, leaving the grasslands exposed and gasping under the tyranny of the sun. To a traveler on horseback, the landscape was a majestic sea of amber and sage. To Elara Vance, it was a tomb. Elara crawled. She no longer had the strength to walk, and barely the will to breathe. Her wedding dress, once a pristine symbol of hope, was now a tattered gray rag, stiff with dried blood and the dust of the trail. Her fingers, raw and blistered, clawed into the unforgiving earth, pulling her body forward inch by agonizing inch. Just one more inch, she told herself, though she didn't know why. The pain in her back was a living thing, a throbbing reminder of what Silas Thorne and his brothers had done. They hadn't just beaten her, they had branded her. The heated iron had hissed against her skin, carving a single word into her flesh: broken. It was the last thing Silas had said to her before they kicked her off the wagon like a sack of rotted grain. "You ain't no wife, Elara. You're broken goods. Let the coyotes finish what I started." She had been out here for 3 days. Her throat was full of glass shards. Her lips were cracked fissures. Above her, the vultures circled, patient black kites riding the thermals, waiting for the inevitable. Elara collapsed into the meager shade of a mesquite bush, the thorns tearing at her sleeves. She closed her eyes. Let it end. She prayed to the uncaring sky. Please, God, just let it end. She didn't hear the hoofbeats at first. It was the vibration in the ground that alerted her, a rhythmic thrumming that terrified her. He's come back. Silas had decided dying of thirst was too merciful. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded her veins, giving her a burst of adrenaline. She tried to curl smaller into the thorns, to become invisible, but the rhythm was wrong. It wasn't the heavy, lumbering plod of Silas's draft horses. This was light, fluid, fast. Through the haze of her swollen eyelids, she saw a paint horse halt nearby. The rider did not move like a white man. He sat loose and easy, part of the animal beneath him. Kalo had been tracking a stray mare since dawn, but what he found in the brush stopped his heart. At first, he thought it was a pile of discarded laundry, perhaps blown from a settler's wagon. Then the laundry moved. He dismounted, his movements silent, his hand resting instinctively near the knife at his belt. He was a warrior of the people, a man who had seen the brutality of the frontier, but the sight before him made his stomach turn. It was a woman, a white woman, broken and discarded. Elara sensed him before she saw him clearly. She looked up, terror masking her face. "Make it quick," she rasped, the words tearing her throat. "Please, I'm not worth the bullet." Kalo froze. He understood the English words, but the resignation in her voice hit him harder than a physical blow. He crouched, keeping his distance. "I am not here to hurt you," Kalo said, his voice deep and steady, like the rumble of distant thunder. Elara flinched. He was Comanche. She had been raised on stories of their savagery, told they were monsters who snatched women in the night. Yet, looking into his dark, intelligent eyes, she saw none of the cruelty she lived with every day in her husband's house. She saw only pity. "Water," he said, unhooking a skin from his belt. "Drink." Slowly. When the cool liquid touched her lips, Elara sobbed. It was the first act of kindness she had experienced in years. She drank greedily, but he pulled the skin away gently. "Too much will make you sick," he warned. "Why?" she whispered, looking at him. "Why help me? I'm broken." Kalo looked at the woman. Bringing a white woman to his camp was dangerous. It could invite the wrath of the soldiers. But leaving her here was a death sentence, and Kalo was not a man who walked away from suffering. "Because you are alive," Kalo said simply. "And that is enough." He lifted her effortlessly, her weight negligible in his strong arms. As he settled her onto his horse, Elara leaned back against his chest. The scent of pine, leather, and wood smoke filled her nose, replacing the smell of dust and blood. For the first time in her life, amidst the terror and pain, she felt a strange, impossible sensation: safety. The camp was a circle of buffalo hide teepees, smoke curling lazily into the afternoon sky. As they rode in, the camp quieted. Women paused their scraping of hides. Children stopped their games. "Do not fear," Kalo murmured against her ear. You are under my protection." An elderly woman emerged from the central lodge. Her face was a map of deep lines, her eyes sharp as polished obsidian. This was Elder Elu, the band's healer and matriarch. She looked from Kalo to the bundle in his arms, and her expression darkened. "You bring trouble, grandson," she said in the tongue of the people, then switched to English as she saw Elara's condition. "Who did this?" "Her own kind," Kalo replied, his voice tight. Elu spat on the ground. "Men," she muttered, "bring her to the healing lodge. Swift Fawn, bring water and sage." The days that followed passed in a haze of fever and pain, but also of gentle hands. The women cut away the ruined dress. When they saw her back, the raw, branded word broken, a silence fell over the lodge so profound it felt like a scream. "He branded me," Elara whispered into the furs, shame burning hotter than the fever. "Like cattle." "He branded himself," Elder Elu corrected sternly, applying a cooling salve that smelled of mint. "He marked himself a coward. You, child, are merely wounded. Wounds heal." As Elara healed, she watched the camp. She saw Kalo working with the horses, laughing with the other men. He was nothing like Silas. Silas was chaos and noise. Kalo was stillness and strength. One evening, Kalo found her sitting outside the lodge, watching the sunset. "You are healing," he observed, sitting a respectful distance away. "My skin is," Elara replied, touching the bandages. "The rest, I don't know." "My grandmother says the spirit is like a bone," Kalo said. "If it breaks, it heals stronger at the break." "You speak as if you know," she said. Kalo pulled down the collar of his shirt, revealing a cluster of numbered scars on his shoulder. "I was taken by soldiers when I was a boy. They tried to beat the savage out of me. They gave me a number instead of a name. But I remembered who I was. You must remember who you are, Elara." "I don't know who I am," she confessed. "I was a daughter, then a wife, then nothing." "Then you are free," Kalo said, his eyes locking onto hers. "To be whoever you choose." Their moment was shattered by the sound of shouting. Riders were approaching, white men. Elara's blood ran cold. She scrambled up, peeking through the lodge flap. It was him. Silas Thorne sat on his massive black horse, flanked by his brothers and a dozen hired guns. "Send her out!" Silas bellowed, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "I know you savages have her. She's my property." Chief Tall Oak emerged, flanked by Kalo and the warriors. "We have no property here," the chief said calmly. "Only people." "She's my wife!" Silas spat. "I paid 2 horses for her." "Then you overpaid," Kalo said, stepping forward, his hand on his knife. "For you clearly do not know the value of a woman." "I want her back," Silas snarled, drawing his pistol. Elara knew she had to act. She couldn't let these people die for her. She stepped out of the lodge, trembling but standing tall. "I'm here, Silas," she said. Silas smirked, a cruel twisting of lips. "There you are, you broken thing. Get over here." "No," Elara said. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Silas blinked. "What did you say?" "I said no. I am not your property. I am not broken, and I am not coming with you." Silas raised his gun, his face purpling with rage. "I'll kill you before I let you walk free." "Then shoot!" Elara screamed, spreading her arms. "But know that if you do, you start a war you cannot finish." Kalo moved in front of her, a human shield. "Go," he warned Silas, "before I forget my chief's order to keep the peace." Outnumbered and facing a line of knocked arrows, Silas lowered his gun. He glared at Elara with pure venom. "This ain't over, Elara. I'll be back, and I'll burn this whole camp to the ground." He wheeled his horse and rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and fear. Silas's threat hung over the camp like a storm cloud, but life had to go on. As autumn bled into winter, Elara changed. She was no longer the cowering woman in the dirt. She went to Kalo. "Teach me," she demanded. "Teach you what?" "To fight, to ride, to never be helpless again." And so, he taught her. He taught her to use a knife, not with strength, but with leverage. He taught her to ride the paint horses bareback, gripping with her knees and moving with the wind. He taught her the way of the hawk, to watch, to wait, and to strike. One bitter morning, a blizzard struck the plains. The wind howled like a banshee, burying the tipis in snow. When the head count was taken, A child was missing. Small Hawk, the youngest son of Swift Fawn. "I'm going to look for him," Kalo announced, wrapping himself in buffalo robes. "I'm coming with you," Elara said. "It is too cold, Elara. You are not used to this." "I am of the people now," she said, using the Comanche phrase, "and we do not leave family behind." They rode into the whiteout. The cold was a physical assault, freezing the breath in their lungs. For hours they searched, until Elara spotted a mound of snow that looked unnatural. She dove off her horse, digging frantically. Beneath the snow lay the boy, blue-lipped and barely breathing. She ripped open her own coat, pressing his small, frozen body against her warmth, pouring her own life into him. "Stay with us, Small Hawk," she whispered. "Fight." They made it back to camp, Elara refusing to let go of the boy until he was safely by the fire of the healing lodge. When Small Hawk finally opened his eyes and asked for soup, the camp erupted in cheers. Elder Elu placed a hand on Elara's shoulder. "You have the heart of a mother bear," she said. "You are truly one of us." But the winter brought other dangers. A patrol of the U.S. cavalry was spotted nearby. The camp held its breath. If Silas had spun a tale of kidnapping, the army would attack. Captain Mercer, a gray-bearded man with sad eyes, rode into camp under a flag of truce. He demanded to see the white woman. Elara stepped forward, dressed in buckskins, her hair braided with feathers. "Mrs. Thorne?" Captain Mercer asked, confused. "Your husband claims you were abducted, that you are being tortured." Elara looked the captain in the eye. "My husband is a liar, Captain. Look at me. Do I look tortured?" Mercer looked at her healthy glow, the respect the warriors showed her. "No, ma'am. You look free." "I am," she said. "I sought sanctuary here to escape a man who branded me like a cow. If you take me back, you send me to my death." Mercer sighed, glancing at the brand on her shoulder that peeked out from her tunic. He was a soldier, but he was also a father. "I have a daughter back east," he said quietly. "If a man did that to her, I'd kill him." He tipped his hat. "I will report that we searched the camp and found no trace of Mrs. Thorne, just a Comanche woman with pale skin. Good day, ma'am." When he left, the relief was palpable. That night, by the river, Kalo handed Elara a small package. Inside was a necklace of turquoise beads, centered by a silver hawk. "My mother's," Kalo said, his voice husky. "She wore it to remind her that the sky is wide and we are meant to fly." "It's beautiful," Elara whispered. "Elara," Kalo stepped closer, taking her hands. "You asked me to teach you to fight, but you have taught me something too." "What?" "To hope," he said. "I have no right to ask, but will you let me court you? Not as a savage, not as a rescuer, but as a man?" Elara looked at the scars on his chest, then thought of the scars on her back. "Two broken things," she murmured. "Mending each other," Kalo finished. She leaned up and kissed him. It wasn't the terrified submission she had known with Silas. It was a choice. It was fire and sweetness and promise. Spring arrived, painting the prairie in wild flowers, but the peace was fragile. A scout returned with blood on his saddle. "Silas Thorne," the scout gasped. "He has gathered an army, not soldiers, outlaws, murderers. They are coming at dawn. He says he will kill everyone if he doesn't get the woman." Panic rippled through the camp. They were outnumbered. "We must flee," Chief Tall Oak decided. "To the canyons." "He will follow," Kalo said grimly. "He is obsessed." "I will go to him," Elara said, her voice shaking but firm. "I will surrender." "No!" Kalo roared, grabbing her shoulders. "I will not let you go back to that monster. If I don't, he kills everyone. Small Hawk, Elder Elu, you." "Then we fight together," Kalo said. "We set a trap." The plan was desperate. The tribe would flee into the narrow canyon, where numbers wouldn't matter. But someone had to be the bait to draw Silas in. "I'll do it," Elara said. "He wants me. He'll follow me." At dawn, the thunder of hooves shook the earth. Silas rode at the head of 30 men, drunk on whiskey and hate. They saw the camp abandoned, save for one rider on a paint horse, waiting on the ridge. "There she is!" Silas screamed. "Get her!" Elara kicked her horse into a gallop. She rode not away from the danger, but parallel to the canyon rim, drawing the outlaws into the rocky kill zone. She felt the wind in her hair, the power of the horse beneath her. She was not Elara the victim. She was Elara the decoy, the warrior. Bullets kicked up dust around her. She pushed the horse harder. "Come on, Silas, come and get me." She led them into the bottleneck. Suddenly, the rocks above came alive. Kalo and the warriors rose from the earth, arrows flying. The outlaws were trapped in the crossfire. Chaos erupted. Silas, seeing his men falling, realized the trap. But instead of retreating, he charged Elara. His horse slammed into hers, sending them both crashing to the dust. Elara hit the ground hard, her knife flying from her hand. She scrambled up, coughing dust, to find Silas looming over her, a manic grin on his bloody face. "I told you I'd finish it," he screamed, raising his pistol. Elara didn't flinch. She grabbed a handful of dirt and flung it into his eyes. Silas howled, blindly firing the gun. The bullet grazed her arm, but she lunged, tackling him. They wrestled in the dirt, the abuser and the survivor. Silas was stronger, his hands closing around her throat. Black spots danced in Elara's vision. No, she thought, not again. She reached down, her fingers closing around a heavy rock. With a primal scream, she smashed it into Silas's head. He staggered back, stunned. Elara scrambled back, gasping for air. Silas shook his head, growling like a wounded bear, lunging for her again. Suddenly, an arrow sprouted from Silas's shoulder, then another in his thigh. He fell to his knees. Kalo stood 20 paces away, his bow drawn for the kill shot. "No!" Elara shouted. Kalo froze. "He deserves to die." "He does," Elara said, standing over her former husband, who looked up at her with hate-filled eyes. "But death is too easy. He wanted to own me, let him own his shame." She turned to see Captain Mercer and a troop of cavalry cresting the ridge, drawn by the sound of battle. "Captain!" Elara called out. "This man attacked peaceful people. He is a murderer and a leader of outlaws." Silas was dragged away in irons, screaming curses. A broken man defeated by the woman he thought was nothing. The wedding took place 3 moons later. The entire tribe gathered under the vast canopy of stars. Elara wore a dress of white doeskin, soft as butter, intricate beadwork telling the story of the hunt. But the most striking detail was her back. She had asked Elder Elu to change the brand. Using needles and ink derived from sacred plants, the ugly scarred word, broken, had been covered. In its place was a magnificent tattoo of a phoenix rising from flames, its wings spreading across her shoulder blades. The scars were still there, giving texture to the feathers, but they were no longer a mark of shame. They were the texture of her resilience. "Do you, Elara, choose this man?" Chief Tall Oak asked. Elara looked at Kalo. He was handsome, strong, and kind. He was her partner, her equal. "I choose him," she said, her voice ringing clear in the night air. "With all my heart." "And do you, Kalo, choose this woman?" "I choose her," Kalo said, his eyes shining with tears. "She is the sunrise after storm." As the drums began to beat and the dancing started, Kalo pulled her close. "Are you happy?" he whispered. Elara looked out at the firelight, reflecting on the faces of her new family. She touched the turquoise hawk at her throat and felt the phantom weight of the phoenix on her back. "I am not just happy," she said, resting her head on his chest. "I am whole." Years later, when her daughters asked about the bird on her back, Elara would tell them the truth. She would tell them that someone once tried to write her story for her, to tell her she was nothing. But she had taken the pen from his hand and written her own ending. She told them that worth is not given, it is claimed, and that no matter how dark the night, the sunrise always comes for those who dare to look up.